This family of polar bears have reached the edge of the ice. To be honest, they were curious about us and wanted to get closer and check us out. Do you want to learn more on how did that happen? Stay tuned. I'm Roie Galitz, a pro wildlife photographer specializing on polar bears. And in this video, I'll share with you my experience on polar bears photography in the summertime. If you've missed the previous video on how I approached polar bears in springtime, make sure and check it out. But before we start, do you know why polar bears are going extinct? Write us in the comments below and we'll make sure to check it out and see if you're right. So arriving to Svalbard in the summertime is completely different from arriving in springtime, because this time we can't use snowmobiles. Everything has melted, so we have to use a boat. So that's the reason why I charter a small private boat. So we go around Svalbard, circling the island and searching for polar bears in the areas that we know they usually live, because there are certain areas which they prefer. Of course, it has to be on the ice edge, but also between the islands of Svalbard. So how can we know where they are? So polar bears live on the ice edge, and there's a certain kind of ice that they prefer the most. So we track the Norwegian satellite ice sheets daily, just like this one. What you see here is charting of the ice. So you have gray ice, which is really thick ice that you can even drive on with a snowmobile. You have the red, orange, green, and of course blue and white. So polar bears really like the densely packed ice, so we usually go for either the orange or the green colors of this spectrum. But the best kind of ice that polar bears like the most is the orange one. So that's where we're going. The next part is scanning from the bridge. So we go to the bridge is where the captain is, and we take a pair of binoculars and just scan the area around. So we look for bears on the edge of the ice and on land, which is even easier to find. But we're also looking for telltale signs of polar bears, which is not just the bear alone, but also really suspicious bird activity. If you see a lot of seals, that's a good telltale sign. We look for tracks of polar bears on the snow and the ice. So we look not just for the bears themselves, we look for the surrounding activity, which can really show us where the bears are going to be. So why do we take this small boat? Isn't it less comfortable? Well, the answer is yes, it's kind of less comfortable than the bigger boats, but the smaller boats can do so much more. The bigger boats are usually boats that are over 13 people, but most of them are between 80 and 150 people. And there are also huge boats with hundreds and thousands of people who I'm not even going to talk about here. So the smaller boats, up to 12 people, are free of most of the regulations that the bigger boats should comply with. And the regulations really do make sense, because when you're so many people on board a boat, you really make an impact on nature. And if you imagine yourself as a polar bear, and you see this big boat with 100 people coming near you, it makes a difference. And even then, people want to go off the boat and get closer to the polar bear. So you have 10 Zodiacs, those inflatable boats that approach a polar bear, 10 Zodiacs with 10 people on each Zodiac, and you see yourself as a polar bear, and all of these boats are starting to sail towards you. You're not going to stick around. And you don't want to have 2 boats or 3 boats at the same time on the same polar bear. I mean, imagine that impact on nature. So those boats have a lot of regulation that they have to comply with. And the smaller boats are free from most of the regulations. So they can go wherever they want, practically. They can stay as long as they like, practically. And they can go way closer because they have less footprint on nature. So smaller boats are the only way to go to Svalbard if you want to see polar bears up close, or any other animal for that matter. What is the advantage of the bigger boat? The bigger boat, of course, is cheaper than the smaller boats. So bigger boats costs around $7,000 a person if you're staying at a cabin for two, or they can go even lower for $5,500 if you stay in a cabin for 3 or 4 people with no toilet and shower in your room. So the bigger boats are cheaper, but keep in mind that you see way less things. You see way less polar bears. Or you see the same number but further away, and you can't do anything about it. You have a lot of strict schedule, and there is, huge people, huge boat. You got the idea. Okay, so we found a polar bear. Now what? So first of all, we watch its behavior. See if it's comfortable with us coming closer. Is it skittish? Is it afraid? Is that a mother and cubs, or is it a lone male? Are they trying to hunt and we don't want to disturb them? What are they doing? So if they are comfortable and relaxed and fine with us getting closer, then yeah, sure, we'll get closer. If we see at any point that the polar bears are not fine with us getting closer, we will stop and wait, see what's going on. If the bear doesn't want us around, we'll just go for another bear. We can find more bears. It just doesn't have to be this one, and we don't want to disturb it, because otherwise it would be a bad influence on the bear for future references, and we won't get any shots because the bear will be furious. He won't be comfortable. He or she will be stressed. So let's say the bear is comfortable. Okay, so we stop, we take some photos, of course, and then we will lower zodiacs from the boat into the water, and we get in those zodiacs, and then we try to get closer, gently, slowly, steadily. We wait, we see how the bear behaves. Sometimes the bear will approach us, and then we know that we are safe and he's fine or she's fine with us, and then we try to get closer. And again, of course, you got to keep that distance of safety. Okay, you don't want to create a bad influence on the bear. You don't want the bear to attack you. So we'll get closer. We take some photos from the bear's eye level or even lower, like this photo over here. So we'll do our best. We have an amazing experience with the bear. And once we're satisfied or the bear is tired of us, we'll go back for the boat, have a nice meal, relax, chill out, and then maybe come for a second round, depending if the bear is willing. Let's say we found a polar bear on land. Can we go on land with the polar bear? What do you think? Well, of course not. Bears on land are dangerous. That's how most of the people get killed by polar bears, because they stayed on land with polar bears. So we do have to have rifles as required by Norwegian law in Svalbard. But we never want to use them. Of course, we don't want to use them. So we will never, ever be on land on purpose with a polar bear, and neither should you. If you see a polar bear on land that you didn't see before, go back on the boat. But before we land on the beach, we'll scout, we'll scan, we'll search, looking for signs of polar bears, like polar bear or footprints or anything like that. If we find anything, of course, don't go on land. It's not worth risking yourself or the polar bear. I remind you that just a couple of years ago, a polar bear was shot by a German cruise ship crew. So, it's not worth it. It's just not worth getting yourself harmed or the polar bear harmed. Don't go on land with polar bears. But let's say we scanned and there is no polar bear on land. What do we do now? How do we go on land? So we approach with the zodiacs. We beach the zodiacs. So we go on the beach with the zodiacs. We go out of the zodiac. We take the anchor, tie it to a rock or put it in the ground. And then we go around scouting. Of course, we send a scouting party before. We search the area from high ground with rifles and protection, just in case there is a polar bear hiding somewhere. And once it's safe, we'll take our guests, go on land, and have a look around. So we have plenty of things on land. It can be walruses like these guys over here. It can be Arctic foxes like these guys over here. It can be so many cool and awesome things that we want to see on land, which are safe. Bird nest, I mean, look at this cliff over here. Okay, so we will go on land, we will take some photos, but you gotta be aware of the polar bears. You don't want to get in trouble with a polar bear, believe me. So polar bears rely on sea ice to survive. What do they do without sea ice? So they do try to either lower their metabolism and semi-hibernate to conserve energy, and they can go like this guy for 4 or 5 months without any food intake. So that's one strategy, but it's a risky one, because if they go to the end of summer and still the ice won't come, they'll be extremely thin and they can be in danger of starvation. So that's one strategy. Other strategies are going for whatever there is. So polar bears can eat barnacle goose or barnacle goose chicks like this one. And polar bears can go for walruses in case they're starving or desperate. And of course, the polar bear can't hunt down a full-grown walrus. So what they do is they're really smart and intelligent. So they creep up on a walrus colony and then they try to scare them. And then the walruses start to go on a stampede and they go over each other. They can just stampede each other, and some of them can be injured with broken bones, especially the younger ones or the smaller females. And then the polar bears can come and eat what's left. Sometimes they go for scavenging if they find a carcass of a whale, which can provide, imagine a whale, it's 120 tons for a blue whale or 30 tons for smaller whales. And that can supply them with food for months. Okay, there have been instances of polar bears, like 20, 30 polar bears on one huge whale, feasting for weeks at a time. So that's so much food for them, so they don't have to worry about anything else. But so they eat whatever they can. Sometimes polar bears have been found to go to birds' nests eating eggs. So when they're starving, they'll eat whatever they can. Write me in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think your grandchildren, my grandchildren, will be able to see a polar bear in its natural habitat? Would you like to see a polar bear in its natural habitat? I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn those notifications on so you'll see next time I upload a video. And of course, also you're welcome to share with your friends who like polar bears, nature and environment. What would you like to see next? Write me in the comments below. I read everything, I try to comment on everything, and I'll try to make a video especially on what you ask me to. Thanks for watching and see you next time somewhere wild.